I now look to Dr. Ghatakami to continue the case for the opposition.
Right, thank you. I have the unusual honor to follow Colonel Kemp, who is such a friend of the Palestinian people. What a pleasure it is to hear that you really are. Now, I don't want to disturb the fantasy he's living in, which comes straight out of the Israeli Foreign Ministry books. I think we have to leave him to that. But for the rest of us, we need really to deal with what this is all about. Now, you've heard from previous speakers about the fact that the Arabs have treated the Palestinians very badly, that they have inflicted all kinds of things on the Palestinians. But you know, what is at the basis of this idea is something absolutely false, wrong, which we must put right straight away. The Arab world is not responsible for the plight of the Palestinian people. The agency that created the problems of the Palestinian people is Israel. It is Israel we need to be talking about. Unlike what our first speaker for the motion said, it's Israel we need to be talking about, its responsibilities towards the Palestinian people and what it needs to do to make up for the terrible things that it has done to them. Now, the Arab world has been asked to do two things which I really think that any other part of the globe could never have tolerated. They were asked to do, first, to have imposed on a part of the Arab world, Palestine, a group of settlers facilitated by a colonial power to come in and take the place of the indigenous native people of Palestine and to take their country. The Arab world was asked through this action to make up for the crimes of Europe against the Jewish people. The comparison with the Nazis, which is extremely inappropriate in the context in which Colonel Kemp used it, the real comparison is the way that the Arab world was asked to make up for the crimes of Nazism against the Jews by giving up part of the homeland, the Arab homeland, Palestine, in order to house and give refuge to people fleeing from German persecution, but not at European expense, oh no, at Arab expense, at our expense. So that's the first thing. The second thing that the Arab world has been asked to do is to pick up the pieces of what the Israelis did to the Palestinian people. Because what happened, and what is the subtext of all this, and what is the fundamentally correct premise of our discussion, is that Israel, as it was being formed and as it became established, caused the expulsion of the Palestinian people, the natives of Palestine, and left the other people, the Arab world, to help those Palestinians it had expelled, and which it has never allowed back. Now, I want to tell you, I want to give you a personal feel about the way the Arabs behaved towards the Palestinians. I want to take you back to 1948. In April 1948, my family was expelled from Jerusalem, which was our home and our homeland. We fled to Syria, to Damascus. And I can tell you, I was a child, but I remember the generosity, the kindness of the Syrian people who gave up their homes, their mosques, their schools in order to give us house room and to help us. That was going on all over the Arab states, where the expelled Palestinians had to go and find some kind of refuge. And I want to remind you of what that Arab world was like. We're not talking about the Arab world you think you know today. We're talking about a time in which the Arab states, the ones that had to receive the consequences of the creation of the State of Israel, what sort of condition were they in? They were struggling for their own independence. Syria acquired its independence in 1945. Lebanon was created in 1943. Egypt got rid of British influence in 1952. Those countries were in the throes of struggles for their own independence. They were very poor. A UN report of the conditions at the time shows you the sort of underdeveloped, poverty-ridden, disease-ridden areas that these were. Mostly rural population, very little industrialization, illiteracy of around 80%. Now, it was those countries in that condition that had to give house room to the Palestinians, and they did it, and they did it generously. And they gave their lands freely for the refugee camps that were set up in those lands and continue to this day. Now, how is it the fault of the Arab world that they should have been forced to receive a flux of refugees in a very short time, 750,000 people? How was it their fault that they should be the ones to actually give house room to these people, help them to survive, make them into human beings, normal human beings, to try to help them to get over the trauma of that expulsion? I am a living example of what the Arab world did. I'm a living example of the fact that I was able to grow up, to be educated, to be in this country. That could not have happened without Arab help, I assure you. So I'm asking you to look at this through the following prism. Number one, that the exodus of Palestinians was not the fault of the Arab world. The fact that the Palestinians should have been allowed to return home was the responsibility of Israel. If the Palestinians had gone home, we wouldn't have any of these problems. And secondly, you need to see this through the prism of Western domination of the Arab region and of the creation of a settler state, Israel, inside the heart of the Arab region, and the fact that so many of the governments in the Arab world are client governments of Western powers. Colonialism, believe me, is alive and well in the shape of imperialism and imperial interests in our region. That is the way we need to understand this issue, and that is why you do not blame the people who were not responsible for the crimes that were committed against the Palestinian people. You blame the criminal, and the criminal is Israel. I urge you, beg you, ask you to oppose this motion.